I've seen a lot of people upset about the Supreme Court decision, but very people can articulate what the Supreme Court decision is or how it came to be. So I'm going to tell you the story, and you tell me whether you think it's unreasonable. In 2008, a high school football coach in the United States decided to pray before every match. And he did this by himself, and after a while it became a habit. And as the years go by, more and more students decide to join him in prayer. Again, this was completely voluntary. No one was forcing the students or anything like that. But it drew the ire of the school, and they fired the teacher. So eventually, he sued the school, saying that it's his right to exercise free speech. And because of that, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and apparently the Supreme Court ruled that he is allowed to do it, so they shouldn't have fired him. And now the media is saying that, oh my god, this is going to be the start of the American theocracy. The Supreme Court has eroded the separation between church and state. Now, we already know that if the guy was a Muslim and he would take a break during coaching because it's the prayer time, and he would orient himself towards Mecca and he would put the Muslim mat and start praying. If the Supreme Court would rule based on how all these publications like CNN wanted the Supreme Court to rule and say, like, no, you're not allowed to do that on public school ground because separation between church and state, the exact same people that are freaking out now would be freaking out in that situation. And we're like, oh, bigotry exists in modern day America. Oh, the bigots. Oh, look at the bigots. But of course, according to the law, a Muslim teacher can literally do that. Right? If it's by himself, he's not trying to proselytize, he's not trying to get anyone else involved. Like, we're talking if a teacher that is of Muslim faith wants to pray before every match, he can't be fired because of that. Now, of course, it can still create public controversy. Like, maybe some Christian parents would be like, well, I don't want a teacher of a different faith to instruct my child who's a devout Catholic and blah. Like, that could happen, but legally speaking, okay, because that's what the Supreme Court does. Like, I noticed there's this disconnect in the mind of progressives. They don't understand the difference between law and culture. Legally speaking, a person doing that would be allowed. And for the last time, the Supreme Court doesn't interpret morality. Like, when the Supreme Court talks about abortion or gay marriage or whatever, they're not telling you what is moral. They're telling you what the founding fathers said when they wrote down the Constitution. That's it, okay? Like everything else, the legislation stems from the states. The Supreme Court only talks about the Constitution. And what does the Constitution say? Well, it says that the Congress will make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So, in other words, a student which prays before an exam on public school grounds isn't violating anything? Because this is what you're saying. Like, if the teacher isn't allowed to pray before a match, neither does the student is allowed to pray before an exam. Again, I know that the progressive really love this example. Like, if you talk to them about Christians, they're like, a Muslim student, okay? A Muslim student is allowed to pray in front of the class if he wants to before an exam. Or whatever the fuck he feels like it. So, I don't know why this is like so astonishing. It's like, oh my god, the decision that changes everything. The American theocracy is back in full swing. No. Alright? Just absolutely not. And then, of course, I'm curious how many people even understand the rationale of the founding fathers when they tried making the separation between church and state. Because the rationale is like this. Even though most people now think about Christianity as an umbrella, in the past, when America was founded, you had different Christian groups that were very aggressive towards each other. I mean, we're talking about actual violence events where people died. And this is like the Protestants and the Catholics. Like, when you had neighborhoods that were together, and one neighborhood had Catholics and one Protestants, they would usually have various street fights, and it was really nasty. So you have all these people from Europe, from various denominations, various languages, like the Germans and Irish and English and French, and you put them all into one country. Right? And these people have different values, they have different languages. How do you get these people to work together and to put their differences aside? Well, one nation under God, motherfucker. That's literally what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to say, all right, well, we understand that you have different backgrounds and you come from different beliefs, but now you're here, you're going to speak English, you're going to pledge allegiance to the American flag. And while Europe had World War II, the United States was united. Minus the Asians, which that was a shameful part in American history. But what I'm trying to say is that, look, the whole concept of separation between church and state is that when you go to a public school, you're going to have people that have various beliefs, like completely different than one another. So the only way that you have people working together is to not talk about it. But the modern way of thinking is like, no, everything is political. We need to talk about it. We need to ostracize people that think differently. We need to punish people that have different values and different ideas. There is no reconciliation. There is no middle ground. You have only decent people and Nazis, right? So this is the new mentality. And of course, it's legal because the founding fathers at the time couldn't predict this new ideology. But what I am trying to say is that this exact mentality is what the founding fathers tried to avoid. They tried to avoid ideologies that are being pushed that are incredibly divisive, right? So you do them in your private time, but the government shouldn't differentiate between different ways of belief. And again, when you're moving towards an atheist society, when a lot more people are not believing in God as they used to, then they have other ideologies. They form other belief systems that don't necessarily have a deity in them. But at the same time, the people who believe these things are bigots. Like, they're not going to change their mind. They're going to be violent if their belief system is challenged. So, you know, like, that to me is a little bit more concerning. Like, when you have, let's say, a Marxist teacher that wants to take down capitalism, right? And you have that person there, then I'm concerned about the religious person. Simply due to the power dynamics in society. Like, I do think that more progressive people have a lot more power in institutions now than, say, a high school coach that does a prayer before, a match. Now, during the Bush era, things were reversed. Like, during the Bush era, yes, I agree that the high school person praying before a match had more power. And he could ostracize students that weren't praying and all of that. But that would be completely different. This is not what happened here, okay? So I'm analyzing this particular case. And in this particular case, there is no way that anyone can convince me that is against the law in the United States for someone to pray before a match. If he does it by himself, if he's not forcing anyone else to do it, right? I just can't see it. Like, please tell me, explain to me why you think that is the case, and would you apply this to, for example, a Muslim woman coming at the university with a hijab? In France, they do it, by the way, right? I'm not talking about like, oh my god, my fascist theocracy. No, in France, where they consider themselves a secular state, they actually, I don't know if they did it, but they were proposing to do this, and everyone freaked out, to prevent religious garments, so we're talking crucifixes, roseberries, including the hijab, right? To be worn in public places, like schools, beaches, so on and so forth. And people freaked out, right? But that's like the secular state. That is how that looks like. When you're in public and you're secular, you don't display any religious symbols. And you can't just apply it to a couple of people. You need to be fair. You apply it to everyone or to no one. Let me know what you guys think, though. And I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.